Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's the last Acsom bulletin of the week. It's Friday afternoon. Got a big game tomorrow, and I'm joined by Lloyd Patrick Jepson, James French, Brian Degnan, Jim Orr. It's five-a-sides, and we're going to be unravelling the week that we've just had. I'm going to come straight to you, James. We're talking Liam Scales. Yet another part of the Liam Scales resurgence story happened on Tuesday night. How impressed were you? Under the cosh, how impressed were you with his performance?
Yeah, I think people would be sick of listening to me talk about Liam Scales at this stage, but I think, he was brilliant the other night now. I think he's really kind of dismissed any kind of thoughts that Liam Scales was a bad football player, because I think that was kind of a lingering thought among a lot of Celtic fans. But listen, I thought he was absolutely brilliant now, being honest. Just composure. The way Liam Scales is obviously he's not a huge guy, he's 6'1", whatever, but I thought he was really aggressive in the tackle as well, and just really dealt with what Feyenoord had to throw at us really well. I think once again, like the Rangers game, he outshone Lagerwelk. But yeah, I think Liam Scales, he's really kind of changed a lot of Celtic fans' minds about him. And listen, long may it continues. And when Narocki and Cameron Carter-Vickers come back, there might be a bit of a more competition for that starting centre back role.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I want to just focus on that 9-man performance, right? Because I just believe that, in adversity, you can be galvanised by situations like that. You step up, sink or swim. All the cliches are coming out already in the first 5 minutes of this one, Lloyd. We know James is a fan of Liam Scales. It's not that I wasn't a fan. I hadn't seen enough to suggest that he would be able to displace not even the first two in terms of the centre-halves. I didn't think he was third choice or even fourth choice. I've said, and I've said it again, I thought he was fifth choice when we started this season. But he's been given an opportunity, and he's really grasped the nettle. And like James, I now think that he is definitely going to be classed as a backup at the very worst once everybody's back fit and playing against Lloyd. He's done a great job.
Yeah, it definitely has. I mean, every game he's come in and called upon, he's literally grabbed that jersey. And it's his to lose at the minute. Even when fully fit, I would still reckon he would still get in there, because he's proven at league level, Champions League level so far, he's performed well better than what we all expected. So on that, I generally do think we all said with Tony Ralston a few years ago, he grabbed his jersey, and Liam Scales was doing the exact same thing.
And he is the Tony Ralston of this season,
yeah,
isn't
definitely is. Yeah, definitely is. And these are the type of things as football fans we enjoy seeing. We enjoy seeing that kind of guy who comes in to the team, grabs the jersey and takes it, runs with it.
You're right, and it's great being proved wrong. I mean, listen, I was praying that Barkas would prove me wrong and Ajeti would prove me wrong. It didn't happen, guys, right? And I don't think Ajeti's gone away and scored a barrel load of goals in Turkey yet. So, but in saying that, the Stoke fans are raving about Haksabanovic. I don't know if you saw that the other night. You said grabbing the jersey, Lloyd. I'm going to make this point before I move on to anyone else's view. How good did that jersey look the other night that you're wearing? It looks fantastic on. It's one of the ones that looks even better on, doesn't it?
It does, but I kind of wish I had the Celtic Foundation sponsor on it, because it looked even better with that on it.
Why don't they give you that option up at the superstore? You buy a sponsorless jersey and get the foundation on it, and the money that it costs to get it put on goes to the foundation. There you go. Just doing Celtics. Doing a job for them there, Brian. Yeah, we're talking centre halves. It's a good point Lloyd makes. Right, if we go into the game tomorrow and everybody's fit, where's Liam Scales in the pecking order for you, Brian? Or do you play him because he's not done enough to lose the jersey?
I mean, I think if everyone's fit, it's a different conversation, right? Because you're looking at Carter-Vickers and Trollinarowski as your centre-back pairing. However, like Lloyd very accurately said, he is the Ralston of this season. And I think that the guy's in there, he's fighting for it. And what you get with players like that is there's things he lacks in his game, but he's so determined to make an impression, so determined to keep and fight for it, that you want that. And actually, if you look at the positives from Tuesday, and I'm kind of in your camp, Paul, I think there were a lot of positives. The main positives was a sort of spirit and endeavour and drive and sort of work ethic in the team, which, should always be prerequisites, but aren't always. I think there was a lack of quality on Tuesday, which is a problem, and I think we'll probably come to it later. But in terms of where skills is, I think at the moment, I actually said that. So last week I've been proved wrong because I said he should be dropped and it should be Nat Phillips and Lagerbilk. And I'm happy to be proved wrong because Big Skills has come in. He's looked the part in these past few games when there's been a lot of pressure on him. And fair play to the lad. I'm delighted for him. And if it means Celtic are doing well, I'm very happy to be wrong.
No, exactly. That is always the way. Now, Jim, going into these games, we speak all the time about European aspirations. We go into that match, and I felt a wee bit for Brendan because before we get to recruitment and what he had at his disposal, I actually felt that he put out a team that was matching Feyenoord. We had a game plan that was working to a point, and then situations arose that put him in an impossible situation, an unwinnable situation, sending offs, etc. What does it do for the 9 men in your view, Jim? Does it galvanise them? Does it give them an extra layer of confidence, maybe looking at Feyenoord at home and thinking, we were able to go toe-to-toe with these guys for maybe 50 minutes. We can do better next time round.
I think a lot of things happened the other night. I mean, I said last time, apart from Ibrox, I think we've been pretty poor this season. It's a massive step up into Europe. But I thought with a bit of luck at home, we could maybe do something. But away from home, I didn't expect anything. No surprise to have lost the game. Like you, I thought it was pretty even first half. I thought they weren't too clever. They looked a bit nervous as well. First time back in the Champions League. They were giving the ball away as well. I thought the team was set up well. Maybe apart from Palmer, I went for Yang. We looked pretty comfortable in that first half. And the same way that Dundee looked pretty comfortable last week at half-time. But goals change games. And in those kind of games, team that scores first gets a bit of confidence. And as I'm sure it's been said this week, fine margins with all this stuff, how the wall was set up. Joe Hart takes a step to the other side. People were pointing out the fact that the Feyenoord guys were in the wall and that's against the rules and what have you. So, but after they scored, they grew in confidence. I thought they played really well, much higher tempo, even before the sending off. So once you get down to 9 men, it becomes a bit farcical. So I don't think you can judge much after that. I mean, in reality, it could have been 5 or 6. You know, the offside goals, the penalty save. But the guys battled well and they came to score down to 2, which might be significant. Who knows, come the last game with Feyenoord, because maybe the other 2 teams are much better than us. Maybe it's up to between the 2 of us to get maybe get that 3rd place. I think the teams in our group are not on the same level as what we played last season. And the sending offs for me, I mean, I've said past few weeks we're weaker than we were last season, and I thought we needed experience, athleticism, physicality. But I'd wait till the end of the transfer window to see how that went. But it's the old saying: if you fail to prepare to fail. And I don't blame the 2 really inexperienced young players that get sent off. I blame recruitment, and that because we needed experience for the Champions League and we didn't have it. So Brendan had to play the cards he was dealt with guys like Palmer making his debut. I know for loads of injuries, but they're at the back. You know, I don't think this season, apart from Ibrox, we've looked that clever midfield to front. We don't look as if we're going to score goals. Tony Haggerty used to be on the Friday programme. We talked about, what was it, rip-roaring, never boring, always scoring Glasgow Celtic. I think we're a bit boring this season and we're not really scoring and we're not particularly rip-roaring. But the other night, I thought we did okay, like you said, Paul, up to half-time, perfectly fine margins. I thought if we'd have scored first the other night, the chances are we'd have likely won the game. But I'm concerned about Europe because we really don't have the experience, nor the physicality, nor the athleticism, I think, to compete at that level. And that's against teams this year that I think are a step down from the teams we played last year. So that's a bit of a concern for me. Mr. Negative kicking off a Friday.
Listen, I don't see it as negative. I think it's balanced, Jim, if I'm being honest. And we'll move on to the recruitment because a lot has been made this week. We've spoken not just about the transfer window gone by. We've looked at the last 3 transfer windows and asked the question, has enough quality come in? It's players of an immediate impact. Have they come in? And the point I made, James, the other night is that we had 1 player starting the game who we signed last season, and that player was Alistair Johnston, who I think universally is loved by the Celtic support, and that's down to his performances, the way that he approaches the game. It's a wee bit deeper than just this transfer window, I believe, James. I just don't think we did the transfer business last season that we should have done.
Yeah, listen, I think in terms of just Celtic and like playing in Europe, where it's always going to be a question of experience, and just the way Celtic are in the football food chain, like suppose Benfica, Ajax, we're always going to have obviously kind of younger players with a view to selling them on in the future. Just unfortunately the way football has gone for clubs like Celtic. But 100%, I think the recruitment this summer and last summer hasn't been good enough. I think the board. I know we could go on forever talking about the board, but I don't think they have a view to seeing us be really competitive in Champions League and Europa League. I don't think they have that ambition to. I think they're kind of happy to get to the group stage, get to 25 million or 30 million or whatever the prize money is, and kind of just take that and move on. Really, which is it's sad really for Celtic fans really, because it's just going to be really unlikely for us to go far in Europe. But if you look at the Champions League performances last season, you look kind of the three areas that we struggled. Defense, midfield, we lack physicality, we lack a destroyer kind of. Left back, where Taylor, who to be fair, he wasn't terrible the other night, but left back is a weakness, and then goalkeeper is just another position that we haven't improved at all. But recruitment, I think it's in terms of tactically the other night, I think Rodgers got a spot on. You kind of has to. You have to play with the cards you're dealt, like, and I thought Rodgers done that really well. That midfield trio of McGregor, Hatate, O'Reilly. I think that first half performance we saw them really back to their best of what that midfield three can produce in Europe. I was hearing all week that final where midfield was really obviously a lot of talk they're going to play us off the pitch and stuff by Dutch pundits. But that Dutch midfield, I thought we just really dealt really well with them. I think Weifer in midfield for final, he's a Dutch internationalist, and he looked pretty average against O'Reilly, Hatate, and McGregor, to be honest. But
what do you feel about Hatate's performance on Tuesday night?
Who are you talking to?
I thought, I presume, yeah, I thought Hatate was just kind of lacking that bit of confidence and swagger that he normally has in these kind of games. I think he obviously won the ball back a few times on Tuesday, but just didn't have that belief and confidence to kind of make that killer pass or take that shot like on, and he's just kind of lacking in confidence. Definitely, I'd say Hatate at the moment, which hopefully will come back in time in the next few games.
Yeah, you do hope so, because I mean we've seen enough to know that he's an extremely talented young man. Lloyd, I'm going to come to you because James raised the point there in relation to what are our aspirations, because when you bring in a manager like Brendan Rodgers, I don't know how much he's on a year, but he's a very well paid manager, potentially on the biggest salary we've ever paid for a manager coming in. And when we brought him in, and I stick by this at the moment, I've not seen anything to change my mind, he's the right man for the job, and he was the right man at that time for the job. But in terms of the recruitment and progressing in Europe, I don't think we did anything in a transfer window to suggest that that's what we tried to do. So then you start to get the feeling that the board are quite happy to hedge their bets and say, you know what, this brilliant manager that we've brought in, who's very expensive, he'll get us through this wee bit here. We'll buy 6 or 7 development players, but Rodgers will still get us through the new year, and we'll still be playing European football after Christmas, which Rodgers mentioned last week. And maybe in January we'll go and buy these guys that are a wee bit more proven, a wee bit more experienced. I don't think that's good enough, Lloyd. I just think that is lacking an ambition. Now, I'm not saying we can go out and spend 50 million in a transfer window, but I think we can spend our money better.
Yeah, of course we can, but then it also comes down to, you can start looking at January targets now if you want, but if we're not in European football after Christmas.
Yep.
So you've got that aspect to look at. There's something I looked on this morning as well, and it was the last 5 Champions League campaigns we've had. We've only won 2 games out of 25 games, which is Ajax and Anderlecht. And one was at home, one was away. So a European record in Champions League isn't good enough, especially not the last.
Miles off.
It's miles off. So it comes down to, once again, recruitment over all these years. The board's just happy, right? We'll get to the Champions League. We'll get a good wee payday. Well, look, we'll have £72 million in the bank. And what will we do with it? It's not good enough as a club.
No.
It's
No,
not.
I don't think the board's aspirations match many of the Celtic fans. You don't speak for anyone else other than yourself, but I don't think that they do match the ambitions of the fan. But what happens, Brian, what tends to happen is you have this early season ambition and it goes up to the point where you want to do well and you want to bring in the players in time, you want to have that settled squad. Then you have the disappointment of Europe. And as Lloyd says, it's almost season on season. And once Europe's out the way, you concentrate on the domestic game. And by the Scottish Cup final at the end of the season, that's all you're concentrating on. Do you think the boards know this? They know that that is the trajectory of a fan's emotional kind of scale from the beginning of the season, where we're full of aspirations, full of ambitions. But once they're taken away from you, you know, you've just basically got to deal with your domestic territory and beating the team that's closest to you. Invariably, that team will be Rangers. And do you think the board can play on that a wee bit?
I think they do. I think there's two ways to look at this. If you look at it from a business perspective, the board can say the past 20 years has been, you know, almost unparalleled domestic dominance. And with that, they've got the healthiest cash balance they've ever had.
Yep.
So as a business, there's no they don't have any reason to change their approach. Whether they should or not, it's a different conversation. But they don't really have any reason to change it. In terms of the recruitment, the system that's in place just now for this transfer window was the same as last season and the same as the window before under Ange. I said many times that Ange worked within our system. He just done it better than anyone else. He just got the right players at the right time for the right amount of money. He tried that approach the following season, didn't quite work. I don't know how these players are going to work this season, but ultimately, it has to. Brendan Rodgers has to be as accountable as anybody else. We can't always just blame the board. Because if Brendan Rodgers he said at first he was a coaching manager and he coached the players that's there. Then he said he's got final say over transfers. Then he said he's not happy with the transfers. And the guys that, you know, youth guys he sent out on loan, and you go, Bill, you get that doesn't ring true to me. He said he was coming in to assess the squad at the start of the season. Now, at the start of the season, you could write on paper, left backs 2, one's no great, have, you know, a lot of potential. Right backs 2, attackers 2, centre backs 7, or whatever it was. Clearly, a blind man in a dark room with sunglasses on could see we need to cover it full back. We probably need a keeper since the first Scottish keeper's 36, and we need another striker for cover. Brendan Rodgers didn't cover those positions. He never signed a striker, he never signed a left back, and he never signed a keeper. So that's not necessarily the club's fault because he was backed and he made the choices of who to bring in. So I think that, you know, that people keep talking as well and saying we should be buying, you know, we've got 30 odd million in the bank each year, profit or whatever. Spend that on players and you go, right, okay, so you spend that on players to get in the Champions League. Spend that on 3 players, right? Say they don't settle in the country, they get injured, they don't like their teammates, they don't enjoy Brendan Rodgers, or say they do really well in the Champions League, but there's not a bad group, so you don't get out of that Champions League. So you're not making that extra money, so you put another 30 million in to get the extra 10 million you get if you get into the last 16. How sustainable is that over a period? It's no. So I get people's frustrations about no spending the money. I think it has to be spent properly. I don't think it's the amount that's the issue. I think it's the scouting and the decision making as much as. And I say, just what I would say though is, Lloyd mentioned the 70 odd million that's the bank. That should be reinvested into the club in terms of stadium renovation, QR codes, paperless tickets, you know, top recruitment guys, sports scientists, all that good stuff. Because what you can do is, if you've got Real Madrid here, we can't compete to buy their players or pay their wages. We simply can't. But there's no reason we can't have as good of facilities, as good of staff, as good of training. There's no reason we can't have that. There's no that big a gap there. We've got the money to do that. So we should be concentrating on that. So I do think, you know, the money should be reinvested, but I think it should be reinvested into the club and the scouting and the sustainability. I don't think throwing money at players if you're selecting the wrong ones is going to work. It has to be the right choice first.
I agree with that. And some of the great images that I saw of the likes of JP who had gone over to Feyenoord on Tuesday night were of massive, big celebratory murals and all that. And I keep banging on about it. Why don't we do that kind of stuff outside the stadium? Make it a place that, you know, all around the footprint you can visit from all over the world and have a proper experience. Now, Jim, I just said there about the board's aspirations versus the fans' aspirations. Where do you think the board's aspirations are?
We seem to have this same conversation season after season after season, and I agree with Brian and some of the things that he was saying about it's actually not about the money. It's actually what I've said in the past. It's not about buying big, it's about buying smart. And it depresses me. I mean, our new manager is not. The reason he's here is to win things. How do you win things? Do you get the best possible players at your disposal to win things? Has he got the best possible players he could have had? No, he's not. And what we were saying before the transfer windows closed was, the really good players go at the end of the window. The guys that are popular, the guys that are hard to get. So you're thinking, okay, well, let's wait to the end of the window and we get Nat Phillips on loan. So this has happened before, season after season. And the point I was trying to make earlier about experience, no doubt when I say this, there's going to be comments about this guy's got no ambition. But for me, experience is a major, major thing. And if I look at the last couple of seasons, Aaron Moy cost us nothing, made a huge contribution. Juranovic cost us £2-3 million. A regular starter in one of the top countries in the world, Giakoumakis, cost us less than £3 million. Top scorer in the Dutch league, bags of experience. They're no longer there. They made a huge contribution before. What did we buy this time round? No experience at all. You go to Feyenoord and you get dumped by teams who do have experience. Maybe not at Champions League level, but European experience. And for me, I think there must be players out there who are maybe 27, 28, 29 years old, playing in the Swedish league, Norwegian league, Dutch league, whatever, who must have years and years of European experience. Maybe not at their peak, maybe they're just past their peak. Maybe they played for their national team 5 years ago and get 20-odd caps. But guys have got the nous to know what you do in Europe, who would love the chance to come to Celtic Football Club, to compete in Champions League, to play in front of 60,000. But that's not our model. Our model is to go out there and buy loads of young guys that we hope are going to make us money. And that's the thing. I mean, Lloyd or Brian talked about the £70 million sitting in the bank. I mean, it's an astonishing amount of money. I'm currently writing Bendel at the Bonnet. At the time, we'd £6 million of an overdraft, about to go bust. You could never conceive 29 years ago that we'd have £70 million sitting in the bank. And a business is there to make money. So if you've got £70 million, you don't have it sitting there. You use it to make more money. And I'm not too sure that we'd planned for this £70 million. I'm really not that sure. And what we'll also find strange is the fact that also we made a profit of 40 million quid. So we need to pay tax on that because that's what you do. Oh, wait, hold on.
Most football clubs do, Jim. Most do.
Most football clubs do because that's the rules. You need to follow the rules. But another point that was really interesting in the Peter Law statement, and I had to write this down because I wouldn't forget it. It said the average age of the squad is 24, so real potential for development. And that just says to me, we've bought more assets and we're going to get more money on these assets. And you can't argue that Celtic is not a phenomenally well-run business. And I think what kind of tends to happen is that football fans tend to mix them both together. But if you keep them separate, if you say, as a business, £120 million income, and they made £40 million on that. So they spent £80 million and made £40 million of a profit. They made a 50% markup on that. That's astonishing business. It's a brilliant business. But on the football side of things, I think they got it wrong. Personally, opinion, I don't speak for anyone but myself. I think it's not all about buying all these young guys in and hopefully it will work out. I watched the second half of the game last night and the main rivals bossed a pretty good Spanish team. They've got loads of experienced players in their team. They're not a great team, obviously, but that experience kind of helps in those kind of games. We throw in a lot of inexperienced players into a major European game. What do you expect? Do you expect to fail? Of course you expect to fail. And I'm not, I said before, I'm not trying to be too negative, is that I kind of questioned what the motivation of the manager was to come back. It wasn't to come back to this. Surely it wasn't to come back to this. Because the actual fact, and maybe we're going to talk about other things later on, I think our performances, I said earlier, have been pretty poor. We've not been great to watch. We're not scoring goals, and we're just kind of getting by. It's brilliant that we're 4 points clear after only 5 games. And we won at Ibrox, which was fantastic. But I've got some concerns about this season. And back in July, I said I'm a bit concerned that we're maybe sleepwalking into this season. And there's bits of the season I think that may be the case. But in terms of the business, it's doing astonishingly well. In terms of the players that we bring in, we do need experience, we do need physicality, we do need athleticism. Everyone's saying this. Everyone is saying this. So why don't we? And the manager knows 1,000 times more than we do. And I'm sure he won't. Because he talks about quality. That's the word he used. We don't have enough quality. But quality is about experience, athleticism, physicality, skill. You combine all these, that's quality. And he knows himself he doesn't have the quality. And if I was him, I'd be concerned about the fact that, I've not got what I wanted. And therefore, I need to use all my experience as a manager to try and get some sort of success here. And it shouldn't be like that. We should have been walking out the first game of the season there, Ross County at home, with our first team that were better than last season, and we didn't.
Right, Jim, I think you've made a brilliant point on the experience. I want to touch on that because there's nothing against the players that were brought in. And see, in 2 years' time, we might have someone that we've developed just like we developed Jota. We might have, so we're not writing them off. But what you said there in terms of the actual experience that's walked out the club, you mentioned Aaron Moy. Yeah, very, very shrewd bit of business. Definitely an Ange pursued signing. And he done a brilliant job. Then he retired. So he's out the building. But the other three people you mentioned I find very interesting, right? Well, you mentioned Juranovic and Giakoumakis. I'm going to throw Starfelt into that mix as well, right? So Starfelt is 28 years of age. Juranovic is 28 years of age. And, look, Giakoumakis is 28 as well. So they weren't that model of 20 to 23-year-olds to pick up for between 1.5 to maybe 3.5 million quid. They were a different type of signing. We've lost all that experience times 4. And that experience hasn't been replaced. I think it's a pivotal point. There weren't enough signings like the Giakoumakis James, who was the top goal scorer in the top league in the Netherlands. There wasn't the same quality brought in or experience of Josip Juranovic, for example, when we went back in. And by the way, I'm not saying we need a right back. I think Johnson's tremendous. But we have lost a lot of that experience. Do you think we just got the balance wrong in the recruitment this season, James?
I think obviously experience plays a huge part, but in terms of even if you look at Feyenoord, their recruitment, I think this is the first time they're competing in the UEFA Champions League for 6-7 years. They obviously sold Orhan Koçu, the Turkish international, 25 million. I think one other player for 5 million. We were the same. We sold Jota for 25. We sold Starfelt for 5. I think they brought in 4 players for a minimum fee of £5 million. So they spent £20 million on 4 players, and then obviously made other signings as well. And if you kind of compare that to ourselves, we've obviously signed a Rocky for I think it's 5 or 6 million, but that's our only real signing above that 5 million threshold, which just isn't really good enough when you're trying to make that step up into the Champions League. You need to be making signings, that real quality signings above that 5 million mark. Obviously, it's not about the transfer fee. Look at Rio Tate, Matt O'Reilly. These guys came for absolute pennies. But just to really be competitive in the Champions League, you need to make signings above that kind of £5 million threshold, which we didn't do. Just to touch on experience as well. If you look at Ajax's run to the Champions League, I know Ajax obviously in a different world at the moment to us, but over 5-6 years ago, they got to the Champions League semi-final. That team wasn't just a bunch of kind of wonder kids. They had real experience there to kind of help them young players grow and develop and go as far as they did in the Champions League. And I think Jim Spahn, I don't think we have that experience at the moment at that European level. I think Nat Phillips obviously would have helped loads in Rotterdam. Champions League experience, Premier League experience. He doesn't make that mistake Lagerbielke does. And I think experience, quality. Just to touch on what Jim said as well, physicality I think was a huge issue the other night. I think our midfield got bullied a bit by their three centre midfielders. They're much more physical, much quicker over the grass. But it's sad because in terms of technical ability, our midfield are really, really good. It's just we need kind of a destroyer in that midfield who can offer that physicality.
I love that. A destroyer. And that's what Alan Morrison's been asking for as well, getting the big destroyer in the midfield, a big Wanyama type. I'm very keen actually to bring in a lot of the comments because there are loads of different opinions in relation to what happened this week. Stephen Sloan, and anyone asking why is Stephen Sloan always up on the screen, and Jungle Lion and Magnet 67 and Kevin Mullen, because you get in early with the comments. So he's right at the top of the pile. And then when I start working my way down, the names and the faces might be a wee bit different. In the summer, Legia Warsaw sold their best defender to Celtic for €5 million. They spent 650k on new players, and they beat Aston Villa in Europe last night. Yeah, it's about, as Jim and Brian have said many, many times in the past, you're spending smarter. We've got the money. Spend it a lot smarter. Now, Magnet 67, I thought there were plenty of positives from the performance. I've got to agree with that. I do tend to agree with that. Sometimes it's hard to see through the disappointment and the kind of anguish after a big defeat like that. But yeah, there are some positives to look at, and we'll try and focus on some of them going into the Livi game. Jungle Lion, Rodgers not happy with the summer transfers. And yeah, I think a lot has been read into his comments. I've seen the word content quoted by just about every single news source out there. And obviously, what I would suggest is just go and listen to the interview for yourself, make your own mind up. I don't see it as a Terminado style interview. I think that he's been asked that question so many times that he's basically reframing the answer time and time and time again. Kevin Mullen, afternoon, Acsom. Want to see a good performance tomorrow? I feel we haven't really seen a wow performance yet. Slow start to the season, time to get into gear. You're echoing what Jim has said already. And I'll need to say, with regards to James, if you come on to Acsom, you've not really arrived until you get a nickname. And the underwater cabbage salesman has given you a nickname. You are now the Shamrock Shadow. So there we go, the Shamrock Shadow, James French. Hey, by the way, there could have been worse nicknames than that. Lloyd, you've been likened to a James McCarthy lookalike. Is that right?
I don't know what I've been compared to anymore.
You've been.
Listen, I get compared to a lot of things.
Listen, you've played as many games as James McCarthy. That's one thing I would point out. Now, the tagline, forget European hangovers, who starts at centre-half against Livi? We'll come back to some of the issues that were highlighted the other night. But I want to look at the centre-half partnership because we put it out yesterday in the blog. James McKenzie and I were talking about the fact that Lazio's coming up. But before then, we've got Livi and Motherwell, Livingston away, Motherwell away, and then Lazio at home. And we know that Lagerbielke will not be featuring against Lazio. All the other defenders, I think Brendan Rodgers was questioned yesterday about them. Obviously, Carter Vickers is still going to be out until the beginning of October. Nat Phillips is a doubt for tomorrow, so we don't know if and when he'll be back. If he was to be back, Lloyd, for the Motherwell game, say, I still don't know if it's a good idea to then try and create another partnership prior to Lazio. So I think the blog that James wrote yesterday was saying, whoever we're going to be playing, whoever we know is going to be playing against Lazio at centre-half, is it an idea to start them now? Play them against Livingston, play them against Motherwell, or are you more of a take each game as an individual challenge and play Lagerbielke tomorrow because he's fit?
I would probably go away, play Lagerbielke tomorrow, just on that basis that if Nat Phillips isn't fully fit, do you want to risk more injury on a plastic pitch? Because we're already down enough numbers as it is in defensive area. So I would generally like to think Lagerbielke could play tomorrow, but with regards to the Motherwell game, then you would probably be hoping that Phillips would be fully recovered for that with regard to starting versus Lazio.
Yeah, I mean, after the Dundee game, Rodgers spoke about him rolling his ankle, Brian, but there's not really been a time frame, an estimated time of return for Nat Phillips. So we don't know if he's going to be fit for Lazio. We do know that Scales, hopefully, barring an absolute disaster, will be fit and ready to play against Lazio, who plays alongside him. The pitch yesterday is that we've only got one other. If you take Lagerbielke out of the equation, because he's going to be suspended for the game, there is only one other centre-half, and that's Tomoki Iwata, who came on the other night, 8th choice centre-half. Do you play him against Livi? How do you approach that situation, that dilemma, Brian?
So I kind of agree with Lloyd. I think you need to win the game against Livi because it's very difficult and it's on a plastic pitch, so you don't want to gamble too much. But I think against Motherwell, the game before the European game, you probably, whatever centre-back pairing you're thinking about starting against Lazio, you have to start to just give them that 90 minutes. I don't think they can really... You saw what happened when we played Hatate. After no starting the game. He's no started a game, he's no started the season well when he has played. He's come back for an injury and we fling him right in and it doesn't work. Palmer was much the same. He wasn't great either. So I don't think we can do that. I think we need a bit more cautious about it. And I'm kind of like, I'm starting to feel like there feels like a weird shadow over this season for me a wee bit.
A shamrock shadow.
A shamrock shadow, aye. He actually looks like one of those witnesses you get on a BBC documentary.
Dearie me.
That's a better nickname. That's a better nickname. Well done.
But yeah, so I think that there's a wee bit shallow casting. I slightly disagree about the Rodgers comments because I think Rodgers has got previous for this. And I don't think it was as bad as the Terminado stuff and all that. But if you're in work, right, and your boss comes up to you and says, "Are you having a good day at work?" and you go, No. But who is having a good day at work? That's clearly you're being passive aggressive. So, he's too clever a man not to pick his words. And even if he didn't really mean it, said it by accident, he's got to know it's going to be a headline. And it's just that extra little bit of attention and thing you don't want. We don't need it now. We need to just focus and no worry about what's going on behind the scenes, no worry about transfers. You can answer that a million different ways for me. I mean, like I said, yeah, I'm delighted with the players we've got in. They're really good players and we're going to work. Obviously, we're always looking to improve, but I'm very happy. There you go. Maybe a lie. Doesn't matter. That's not how you present publicly. So I've not had that moment. The Rangers game aside was a good in isolation, but I'm not hugely confident or hugely excited about what I'm going to see. It just seems like kind of weird. There's something not quite right. And but look, I'm as sort of wildly emotionally eclectic as anybody else. So if you absolutely scud Livi, I'll be cartwheeling and saying Brendan Rodgers is the best ever. But for the moment, I'm just a wee bit concerned at how things are panning out.
Yeah, I do think there is concern. There is, and we look at everything. We listen intently to every word that comes out of Brendan Rodgers' mouth, like you say, Brian, and then it's absolutely poured over for days until the next time he has a press conference. Jim, I'm going to come to you regarding how you would play the central defensive dilemma, which has been a dilemma all season. We've now got 8. If you want to include Iwata, we've got 8 centre halves, and we're struggling to get a pairing. I think Scales and Lagerbielke have done really well when you consider how they were thrown together. I think we've got a bit of a star coming out of that with Scales. Lagerbielke probably played more games than he would have expected at this stage. But how do you play it? Are you the type, Jim, who would say, listen, forget Lazio. We've got 2 games before that and we need to concentrate on those 2 games.
Forget Lazio, we've got 2 games before them and let's concentrate on those games. I know that was pretty naked gun there, but I'd have to say it.
You set him up for that one, Paul.
I know, thank you. What was the question? No, I think I always play the strongest team. It's going to be a difficult game tomorrow. And I think what I said earlier was the fact that we haven't been firing on all cylinders. We've been a bit pedestrian. We don't have a lot of intensity, high tempo in the team. Hard game tomorrow. Maybe cover that in a minute. Centre backs. The 2 lads did really well the other night. So I would always play the strongest team. And we don't know what's going to be the situation in a week and a half's time against Lazio. Maybe somebody might be coming back from injury. We've been incredibly unlucky. I mean, notwithstanding the fact that we've not been too clever this season, we've been unbelievably unlucky. We bring in an emergency loan centre back and he's injured as well. It's just mad to have that many centre halves and they're all injured. So I kind of sympathise with that. And if maybe we would have dropped some points because of that, I'd have said, well, fair enough. These things happen. But I think the defence has been pretty good. Clean sheet against Dundee last week, clean sheet against St Johnstone, though we didn't score, clean sheet at Ibrox, and up till half-time the other night, we're looking pretty confident. So that's our best centre-half pairing at this point in time. As one of the lads said earlier, Scales has got the jersey, so even when everyone's fit, I mean, Narowski against St Johnstone, that first impression, I'm not like writing the guy off or anything like that, but he was a bit so-so. Phillips against, who was that? Was it Dundee.
Yeah.
Pretty so-so. Lagerbielke, he's relatively solid, the odd mistake. Scales, I can't recall a mistake Scales has made. He's been really, really solid. The fans got on his back at the St Johnstone game because he wasn't getting the ball moving quick enough. But from a defensive point of view, I think he's been pretty solid. So he's a certain start, obviously. And Laga Bielka, because he played really well the other night. And we have to win these games because, as I've said before, I don't think there's much between the top two teams. It's been brilliant that we went to Ibrox and won, but I think they'll keep winning their games. So we need to keep winning our games. And we need to put our best team. And that's our best centre-half pairing at this point in time. So they both have to play.
I'd agree with that. I'm not a big fan of Iwata at centre-half. I like him as a player, but I think his best performances have been as this central defensive number 6 figure. I do think he's a far better midfielder than he is a centre-half.
I think also, Paul, is the fact that if you're a centre-half and a guy gets to play centre-half in place of you start thinking, what's all this about? I'm a centre-half. Why are you playing him there?
Why have you brought me to this club? And you're playing a guy, exactly. Playing somebody out of position. Scales has been described as the new Ralston, but Magnet 67 reckons he's the new Baresi. Stuart Ramsey comes in. I believe that performance on Tuesday will galvanise our team. I think so as well, because a few of them were kind of thrown in there. Palmer on the right-hand side, it was a sink or swim scenario. I thought Palmer looked like a rabbit in the headlights, but he came into the game last 10 minutes of the first half and he started the second half okay, so I'm not writing him off, certainly not. I was surprised that he started. Marquis, the 9 men who finished the game looked strong, even with newbie Bernardo on there with them. Boys composed, good on the ball, definitely one to watch. I'm going to come to you then, James. Do you think that Rodgers will throw any wild cards into the starting 11 tomorrow? Palmer was a bit of a wild card the other night. Does Bernardo get game time, or do you see us going very similar to the starting 11 on Tuesday night?
Yeah, just to touch on Palmer, I think I've seen a lot of Celtic fans kind of writing him off already. His career at Celtic's already finished, but I was quite impressed with it. He seems quite tidy on the ball. Obviously, doesn't seem to have that blistering pace that Milo or Bada has, but he looked quite tidy on the ball and just kind of lacked, probably his first game in a Celtic shirt, lacked that bit of confidence to kind of go and really have an impact on the game. But yeah, I think Livingston away, obviously, David Martindale's always going to be a tricky game. I think Lagerbielke would be a real test for him, because we know how physical Livingston are as a team, the way they play. I think it'll be a real test for him in terms of team selection. I think Rodgers will go with the best case team, really. Livingston away, tough game, and I think he'll want to kind of get a run of games with a kind of a similar players, like, because we haven't really had that. A lot of injuries, a lot of disruption in our starting 11. I think he'll want to kind of get a run of games going with his best 11. I'd like to see kind of maybe Home coming in for Atate. I think maybe start Atate and try and get his form back, but I thought Atate probably doesn't really deserve to start again after the Feyenoord one. But yeah, I think we'll definitely see more of the same for Livingston away in terms of team selection.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. It always is. I think there was a couple of surprises. Hatate going right back in. Was he fit enough to start? Well, obviously they thought he was, and he's played a role where he was really high up the park. He was really pressing Feyenoord's backline, and I found that quite unusual, because obviously he wasn't right back up to match sharpness at that stage. But it was maybe part of the plan. He only lasted 57 minutes. Brian and Jim, I'm just going to, for a moment, take you off the screens, because there's a wee detail on the logo on the back that I'm going to point out just for a moment. So you see that on the right-hand side, ladies and gents. That is the nominations and the awards that we have won over the last few years. And we're very, very proud to have 6 of them on that wee graphic. Me with my deluxe paint Amiga 500 skills, technically was able to pull that together. And just as I did that, I might have to do another one, because they are going to be announced. The finalists are going to be announced on Monday. These things come around really quickly, don't they? So anyway, the finalists will be announced on Monday. Hopefully Acsom will be in the mix by 12:30. We'll be able to confirm, or otherwise, whether or not we're going down to Anfield for an away day for the big awards ceremony in November. So I'll keep you posted as always. It's always great to be nominated because a lot of people put a lot of hard work into this. So it would be fantastic if we were down there and got a wee night out of it as well. The urban culture, here we go. The shape was fine the other night. I agree with that. I want to talk a wee bit about Brendan Rodgers' game plan. But before I do that, let's talk about Livi tomorrow. James has touched on what he thinks about tomorrow, Lloyd. We always go on about the park. I don't think Ange Postecoglou had an issue with the park. We had a really good record there under Ange, didn't we?
Yeah, we had a good record under Ange, but under previous managers, we didn't. And I think Brendan was one of the first ones to get a point at Livingston when they first came up. So, listen, it doesn't matter, pitch or anything. You put the team in the park should be good enough to beat Livingston. That's the way it should be at Celtic. The 11 players that start the game tomorrow should be good enough to beat Livingston.
Now, there's a suggestion earlier about Home. Home's a player, if you remove all the other stuff, the Instagram stuff, the sending off, as a player, I've been really, really impressed with him. I think he's definitely one of the guys you're looking at thinking, brilliant bit of scouting, brilliant bit of recruitment. Hey, listen, if we buy a 20-year-old and that's a 20-year-old you get, I'm happy with that. I just don't think we got the balance right in that particular window. Do you bring someone else in or do you play Hatate again, Lloyd? Do you let him play through maybe a fitness issue or a form issue, let him play through it, come back to his best? I think Lloyd has frozen. There we go. He's frozen up there. Is he frozen? I'm not sure. Blink if you're with us, Lloyd. Are you back? I'll come to Brian. I'll come back to you. Brian,
there's your witness protection video straight there.
I know, I've got two. Brilliant. Brian, what's your thoughts on that? The Hatate. Because for me, right, Hatate is...
No, I'm frozen.
In terms of... Oh, you're back.
Oh,
you're
he's
back.
there.
He's back.
Madam
I'll come back to you in a minute, Lloyd. I'll come back to you in a minute. I'm interviewing Brian now about that thing. So Hatate, for me, is one of the most naturally gifted players at the club. I think he has got up there with the highest ceiling in terms of where he can go and how he can develop. But sometimes it's not as simple as that. He's not on the best of form. He's obviously not got off to the best of starts under Brendan because he's only started one game. Is he fit? Do you start him? There's my question. Do you start him tomorrow, Brian?
Yes, only because... So I think it was the wrong decision to start him against Feyenoord. I said that in the podcast. I think you should have started Home and tried to do a bit more control in midfield and try and hit the counter. I thought, putting Hatate in, he lost possession a lot and, he didn't track defenders, things like that. And you can get away with that domestically. Now, I sound like I'm hammering him. I'm not. I love Hatate. I think he's excellent. But I just don't think it was the right game for him. Whereas Livingston, I think, is the right game for him. I think you need just that little bit extra to unlock, which is going to be a packed defence. So I would probably start him, unless Bernardo is doing really well in training, because I would be keen to see him. He seems like someone who's a bit more creative as well, and he's got a bit of physicality about him, which we need against Livingston. But until we don't know much about him, I'm just kind of getting excited with the new toy when you want to see him. But I think to be honest, Hatate starts. Just because you need that extra bit of creativity. And I think Hatate's getting a bit of grief for Tuesday, and I was one who's given it. I thought he was really poor. But ultimately it was Rodgers' decision to play him, and I understand his thoughts behind it, but it's got to be 50-50. It's not just the player's fault, it's not just the manager's fault. And it's funny you talk about recruitment as well and the new guys, because I think Hatate and Kyogo were probably two of our poorest performers on Tuesday. And they're probably our two best players. So it doesn't always work out that way. But yeah, long answer for a short question. Hatate starts.
Hatate starts for you. I'm going to come back to Lloyd. Are you back?
I'm here.
He's moving. Yes, he's blinked.
He's so at peace, you can never tell these
I know he is.
He's very calm presence, Lloyd.
Zen-like.
Definitely not Zen at all.
What's your take on it then, Lloyd? Because I know, listen, I'm always of the view you play your best team. I get it, but I do have one eye on Lazio, so that was why I was asking a question about the centre halves. I don't know where we are with Hatate yet. There's differing views coming through in the comment section here. Marquis reckons it's a sub bench for Hatate and Maeda. I think Maeda's come on to a really, really good game. Maybe that's just a tactical thing that Mark is suggesting. Opinionated Glaswegian reckons we should rename it a Crime Watch State of Mind. That would work. Acsom, absolutely. And then we've got John McLean who comes in, who's got a different view on Facebook. Hatate was one of our shining lights for the first 10 to 15 minutes on Tuesday night, kind of the opposite of Palmer. We'd like Home to get time as well, along with Hatate to get match sharpness, but can't drop Matt O'Reilly, the now our best player so far this season. Great point was made yesterday as well, and on Wednesday by John Hughes in relation to Matt O'Reilly, because he was dead on his feet, but it looked as though he was doing a lot of the defensive work that you might not get rather from Hatate, Lloyd. So basically, what I want you to do is pick the midfield for Brendan Rodgers tomorrow.
I think it'll be the same three that start again. I just think Hatate needs that bit more match sharpness because, like everyone's saying, he is one of your best players when he's on form. And if you were going to pick a midfield three all season, it would be Hatate, O'Reilly and McGregor. O'Reilly, for me, is just undroppable at the minute. He's literally been, so far, the standout player of the season. And Joe Hart's also had a good season as well so far, but O'Reilly, for me, is miles above everyone in that team at the moment. So I would definitely go with the same midfield three.
Oh, he has been fantastic. There's no doubt about it. And when you look at the team for tomorrow, Jim, pick your best team. The question is though, what is your best team? Matt O'Reilly has been for me the best player this season. If you're to look at every game, I think Scales is at the moment undroppable. I think Hart has shown his worth. Johnston is a monster when he's on form. So what do you do? I think that the big question mark for me is around probably Hatate and Palmer on the right. Jim, or what do you do?
I think you play your best team for the game, I think. And I think fans are quite fickle. I think a lot of people on Hatate's back the other night. It wasn't his best of game, but he's a risk taker. And if you're a risk taker, sometimes you make mistakes. He came on last week against Dundee. He completely transformed the game. Livingston tomorrow, I think it'll be difficult. St Johnstone came to Celtic Park. Dundee came to Celtic Park and were dead comfortable. With those wide open spaces, they were dead comfortable. Livingston, tight park, horrible surface. We need as many players on that park who can do something with the ball. Hatate starts, definitely. And although I wasn't too impressed with Palmer, I'd actually play Palmer tomorrow and Yang on either side because we need to create things. I mean, Maeda's great for pace, but I don't think that's the kind of game that we're that fussed about pace.
Yeah.
We try and create things. So you go with the same three. Hatate, as I said, I think people are a wee bit hard on him. He's a human being. Sometimes he don't play as well as you could. But he's such a great player. He's a risk taker. He'll take shots from outside the box, which could be kind of vital tomorrow. So I think the team kind of picks itself. I think that one decision, do you keep Maeda or maybe give Palmer? On form, I wouldn't have played Palmer, but I think in that kind of pitch, tight wee park, we need a lot of creativity. And hopefully he plays tomorrow and plays really well and then starts to kick on. But as one of the guys said earlier, it doesn't look as if he's got a lot of pace. So hopefully he doesn't have a lot of kind of skill and is able to create things. And that'll be needed tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm going to come to the rest of the team on that point. I think it's a great point in terms of the wings because I have been saying that we lost that type of player when Jota left the building, the type of player that can take on a man, take on a couple of men, create something out of nothing. Maeda and Abada, a lot of their plays about pace, anticipation, but we do seem to have two wingers in Yang and Palmer, James, who are able to take on a man, or willing to run at their man, take them on. Do you subscribe to what Jim was saying there? We might actually play one or both of them tomorrow.
Yeah, I think Yang was really positive when he came out against Feyenoord the other night, kind of running at them and being more direct. Been really, really impressed with Yang since he's come in now. I think coming from Korea, obviously, coming to Scotland's a bit of a culture shift, but I think he's been brilliant every time I've seen him in a Celtic shirt so far. Palma and Yang, I definitely subscribe to what Jim was saying. I think that's definitely probably the right choice to go with against Livingston. Maeda's obviously brilliant for his work rate, brilliant pace, but I think we know his technical deficiencies at times, and I think Palma and Yang would kind of just offer more creativity for us in the final third, and I think Palma could be hopefully will step up on Saturday and show Celtic fans that his Celtic career isn't finished after one game. But I think Palma and Yang definitely is the right choice.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see the pair of them on the park at the same time. I'm going to go around the room, the virtual room. I'm going to ask you a question based on Tuesday night, based on all the mitigating circumstances, I guess. The circumstances, Lloyd, that, Brendan Rodgers had absolutely no control over going into that game. And then during the game, the things that you can't manage, losing two players like that. And we've seen Brendan losing a player at Ibrox and making a tactical decision that was superb. In relation to, was it Big Simunovic got sent off, didn't he? And he brought on Edward, raised a few eyebrows, won the game. So I think that there's certain occasions where Rodgers is able to deal with that adversity. Tuesday night wasn't one of them. The injuries is something that he can't control. From what you've seen, though, by the time the final Champions League game comes round, Celtic Park, Feyenoord, I heard a bit of fighting talk from Brendan Rodgers after the game. I'm just going to ask you the simple question. Can we beat Feyenoord at home from what you've seen?
Yeah, of course we can. There's nothing to distract that performance that tells me we can't beat them at Celtic Park, because for 45 minutes we were well within the game up until the free kick get given away and then we get 2 players sent off. We were well in the game. Just one chance was all we needed to take, and we didn't take any, really. But it's also got to come down to the other games as well, I think, because you've seen with Atletico Madrid and Lazio, if they're taking points off each other as well, the group's wide open. So anything can still happen.
Yeah, and again, I've said this before, I think that was key to the 9 men, Brian, being really disciplined, because it could have turned into a 3-4-5-0 drubbing. As Jim rightly says, they missed a penalty. They had 2 goals chopped off. I think rightly, by the way, I thought the VAR was brilliant on that occasion, but it could have got embarrassing, and that really could have damaged us. We could have been looking at this group thinking we're -5 already in terms of goal difference. What's your thoughts? Can we beat them at Parkhead?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that while, I've got a wee bit of a cloud over this season, as I said, and I don't think there was loads of quality in show against them. I think that the attitude was tremendous, and I think that's one thing that Brendan Rodgers has done really well. I think the attitude's been really, really strong. I think you saw that against Rangers, and I think you saw it against Feyenoord, because we could have collapsed. But there was a real strong mentality and desire to go, no, let's not be embarrassed here. So yeah, I think that once we get players up to scratch a bit, your Palmers get Hatate back to full fitness, see what Bernardo's got to offer. You get a strongest defence back. I don't think there's any reason we can't yet. I'm still quietly confident we can finish third.
I like that confidence, Brian. A few wee comments to come in before we wrap it up. The underwater cabbage salesman lager pint is used to these plastic pitches. Him and Scales tomorrow. That would be a central defensive partnership. Marquis Iwata looks like one of our best players. His close control is up there. Mark, I thought it was just me that thought that Iwata was a decent footballer. We've not seen anything of him other than Tuesday night's performance. By the way, I must point out, Scales was brilliant in the pre-season again. As well. I forgot about his performances in Japan and against Wolves. I thought he was excellent. Pat Maguire, home as a player, top notch. I think he is. He's been a very good signing, just 20 years old, and he's got the right coach to work with. Michael 89, play the game on sand or red blaze. We should be beating Livingston comfortably. Jim Orr, what's red blaze? Can you let some of the younger viewers know what red blaze is?
For you, kiddies, was it? Actually, back in the 60s, we used to play in black ash sometimes, and it was like black coal. So it was like coal, flat coal, and red ash is a bit like red coal. If you imagine playing in red coal, it wasn't good. But things have moved on now, and there's great pitches all over the place, and kids have fantastic surfaces to play on. You've never had it so good, you young'uns. Yeah,
no, bring back the red ash.
Bring back the red blaze. Mark E. We're usually too cavalier in Europe, but Brendan Rodgers looks to be sorting that. Just need to find our attacking edge. I did think the game plan was excellent, Mark. And I would have loved to have seen us 11v11 for the entire game. Hence the reason, can we beat them at Celtic Park? I think we can. Celtic follower, it'll be Lager and Scales starting. No point risking Phillips on that pitch. I'd start O and Palmer and keep Kyogo and Maeda on the bench. So some are looking ahead to the Lazio game, it would appear. We've already mentioned the Football Content Awards. Hopefully Acsom are in the discussion. Sell the jerseys is the initiative that we are running for Jamie Tierney. He has a disorder, a disease, something that targets his muscles. And you know what? There's no cure for it, but there is treatment, and we're hoping to raise cash to help his family pay for some of the treatment. This is one of the jerseys that's came in. Jazzy or what? Nice neon classic jersey. It's got Lambert 14 on the back, so I'm wondering if it was maybe worn in one of these bounce games. Hopefully it was. This is one of the jerseys. We've got around 100 at the moment. Keep them coming in, and we will be able to raise some cash for wee Jamie. There's a link underneath this video as well. I'll be with Chris Sutton. Love a bit of Chris Sutton. Live at Don Max next month on the 6th of October. 12 tickets left if you want to come along, meet some of the Acsom troops and listen to Chris Sutton absolutely destroying me on the stage. Then there's 12 tickets left, and the ticket link is underneath this video. It's always a pleasure. I'll be back half an hour before the game tomorrow to discuss the starting 11, 12 o'clock, and I look forward to that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in the comments section. And also, thank you to Brian and Lloyd and James and Jim for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, Paul.
Cheers, Paul.